think about the last time you made like a really rock solid promise to yourself.
Yeah.
You set your alarm for 6 a.m. because you were absolutely unequivocally going to wake up and go for a run.
Right, the classic morning ambition.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You laid out your shoes, you had the perfect playlist ready to go, and then, 6 a.m. rolls around, the alarm goes off, and you just blindly smash the snooze button, roll over, and go right back to sleep.
We have all been there.
Oh, 100%. And then when you finally wake up at like 8, you're just flooded with guilt. You tell yourself you're lazy or you lack willpower. You just don't have what it takes.
Yeah, the self-blame is immediate.
It really is. But what if I told you that you didn't fail because of a lack of character? You failed because you brought a tiny logical abacus to a fist fight against essentially a biological quantum supercomputer.
That is, honestly, the ultimate reframe.
Right. And today, we're going to teach you exactly how to hack that supercomputer.
Which is so crucial because we spend so much time punishing ourselves for our behaviors without ever actually taking a look under the hood at the machinery driving them.
Which brings us to the actual mission of today's deep dive. We're looking at a genuinely fascinating source document titled, Your Mind is Your Superpower.
It's a great title.
It is. And our goal today is ambitious. We are going to decode the complex operating system of the human mind. We're going to expose the invisible software bugs that have been, silently triggering your stress and holding you back for years.
And crucially, we're going to hand you a highly specific, scientifically validated toolkit to completely reprogram your reality.
Yes.
And I want to ground this right away because that title, Your Mind is Your Superpower, catchy, right? It sounds like the tagline for a summer Marvel movie.
It totally does.
But we are not talking about manifestation or like magical thinking today. We are talking about peer-reviewed neurology. We are talking about cellular biology, fMRI scans, and the literal physical architecture of your brain.
Hard science.
Exactly. And the goal of this deep dive is not for you to just passively absorb some interesting trivia. Because unapplied knowledge, no matter how profound it is just sleeping potential.
Ooh, sleeping potential. I love that phrase.
Yeah, the goal here is application.
So, to you listening right now, by the time this audio wraps up, you are going to have the exact blueprint to start redesigning your biological hardware today. Not tomorrow, not, next year as a resolution. Today.
But to do that, we have to start with diagnostics.
Right? We have to know what's broken.
Exactly. Before we can reprogram the mind, we need to understand the fundamental split in how it operates. We need to figure out who is actually driving the car.
The hidden operating system.
Yeah.
The conscious versus the subconscious mind.
That's the one.
Let's get back to that 6 a.m. alarm clock failure. Because, we all do it. Or we commit to a strict budget, and then at 9 p.m. on a Friday, we're suddenly buying a pair of shoes we do not need online.
Yeah, the late night impulse buy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Why does this happen when we consciously know better?
Because the part of you that knows better is severely outmatched. Severely. The human mind is divided into two entirely distinct operational systems. On one side, you have the conscious mind.
Okay.
This is the part of the listener that is paying attention to the words coming out of my mouth right now. It's logical, it's deliberate, it understands long-term consequences, and it makes rational decisions.
It's the part that sets the alarm and lays out the running shoes.
Precisely. But here is the neurological reality. That highly rational, highly logical conscious mind is only responsible for, at most, about 5% of our daily behavior.
Wait, 5%?
5%.
That leaves a staggering 95% void.
And that 95% is the domain of the subconscious mind. It's running in the background continuously, 24 hours a day, without you ever being explicitly aware of it.
Like an autopilot.
Exactly like autopilot. It controls your autonomic nervous system, your habitual reactions, your emotional baselines. And what's really crucial to understand here is that this subconscious system is essentially legacy code.
Legacy code? What do you mean by that?
It's an old software program written largely during the first 7 years of your life. It's based on your early environments, the modern behaviors of your parents, and your earliest emotional experiences.
Okay, we need a way to visualize this 5% versus 95% split because the numbers almost don't make sense until you picture them.
It's hard to grasp, yeah.
The best analogy I can think of is imagining a rider and an elephant.
Okay, I like that.
So your conscious mind, that logical 5% is the rider, this tiny, smart human sitting on top. The rider holds the reins, they have a topographical map, they understand the weather conditions, and they know exactly where they want to go.
Right. We are going to the gym today to improve our cardiovascular health.
Yes, the writer possesses the intention and the logic.
Exactly.
But underneath that tiny rider is a massive 6-ton, incredibly powerful, heavily programmed AI elephant, and
No,
that's the
that's a
subconscious.
great image.
Now, as long as the elephant and the rider agree on the destination, everything is beautiful. You feel a state of flow. But the very second there is a disagreement,
That's when the trouble starts.
right? Let's say the rider wants to go work out, but the elephant's core programming, which, like you said, is written 20 years ago, says exertion equals pain, and my prime directive is to seek immediate comfort and conserve energy.
The elephant is just trying to protect you.
Exactly. But the rider can pull on those tiny leather reins all they want. They can scream logic at the elephant. It does not matter in the slightest. The elephant is going exactly where the elephant wants to go, and it is going to drag this screaming rider along with it.
It really is.
We walk around thinking the tiny rider is in control of our lives, but that elephant is doing all the heavy lifting.
It's a perfect analogy. And if we look at the data from our sources, specifically the findings of Dr. Bruce Lipton, he's a pioneering cellular biologist, the disparity in power between the rider and the elephant is actually much, much worse than we think.
Worse than 5 to 95.
Well, biologically speaking, yes.
Yeah.
Dr. Lipton's research quantified the raw computing power of these two minds. The conscious mind, your logical rider, processes data at a rate of about 40 bits of information per second.
40 bits. Okay. I mean, that sounds,
Small.
yeah, small.
Now, compare that to the subconscious mind. The elephant processes information at 40 million bits per second.
Whoa. I need to pause right there. Wait. I know I used the abacus versus supercomputer metaphor earlier, but 40 to 40 million?
Yes.
How is that even biologically possible? Like, what is it even doing with all that data?
Well, think about what is happening in your body right now. Your conscious mind is processing the English language I'm speaking. That's taking up your 40 bits.
Right.
But simultaneously, your subconscious is regulating your core body temperature. It's managing the complex chemical digestion of the breakfast you ate. It's maintaining your physical balance and posture in your chair.
Oh, wow.
It's filtering out the hum of the refrigerator in the background. It's analyzing the ambient light in the room. And most importantly, it's constantly scanning your peripheral environment for physical or social threats.
Just constantly scanning.
Constantly. It's comparing every micro-expression on the faces around you to a massive database of every face you've ever seen since you were a toddler. And it is doing all of this simultaneously at 40 million bits per second.
It's just breathtaking speed. It really is like comparing someone doing math on a wooden abacus to a quantum supercomputer running millions of simulations a second.
And this is exactly why willpower eventually fails. When you try to change a habit using only your conscious mind, you are trying to overpower 40 million bits of automated processing power with just 40 bits of effort.
It's a losing battle.
Completely. You can white-knuckle it for a day, maybe a week, but eventually the conscious mind gets fatigued. He needs to rest. And the very moment the rider takes a nap, the elephant takes over and walks right back to his default programming.
So what does this mean for the listener? I mean, first of all, it means you need to let yourself off the hook.
Absolutely.
Stop drowning in guilt because you broke a diet or skipped a workout. You haven't been failing because you're fundamentally weak. You've been using the wrong operating system to try and force the change.
You're using 40 bits.
Exactly. To actually change your life, you cannot just think differently with your 5%. You have to access the root directory. You have to reprogram the elephant.
Which logically leads us to a massive question, right? Can the elephant actually be reprogrammed?
Right.
For a very long time, the scientific consensus was a resounding no, which shifts our discussion from the software of the mind to the physical hardware of the brain itself.
Right. The old dogma of you can't teach an old dog new tricks. I remember being taught in school that once you hit your mid-20s, your brain was basically completely cooked, like a ceramic mug in a kiln.
Yes. The belief was that the brain's physical architecture was entirely static after early adulthood. The neural pathways were paved, the concrete was dry.
So whatever you had, you were stuck with.
Exactly. If you were naturally an anxious person at 25, you're going to be an anxious person at 80. If you had a short temper, that was just your permanent hardwiring. You were biologically stuck with whatever legacy code the elephant was running.
But that has been entirely debunked now.
Completely dismantled by one of the most significant neurological discoveries of the modern era, neuroplasticity.
Let's define that.
Sure. Neuro referring to the neurons, the billions of nerve cells in your brain,
Hmm.
and plasticity, meaning malleable, moldable, changeable. Neuroplasticity is the proven biological reality that your neural pathways can reorganize, adapt, and grow entirely new physical connections every single day of your life,
Wait, every single day?
from the moment you are born until your final breath.
Okay, we need to map this out visually for everyone listening because the idea of the physical hardware actually changing shape inside your skull is wild.
It's incredible.
Instead of a hard drive, I want you to imagine your brain is a dense, incredibly wild, overgrown forest. When you try a new behavior for the very first time, let's say you try to meditate, it's like standing at the edge of this dense brush with a machete. You have to literally bushwhack your way through.
Which is hard work.
It's exhausting, it's slow, and it requires a massive amount of conscious energy from the writer. But let's say you walk that exact same path the next day, and the next.
And the next, you break away the branches, you pack down the dirt.
It gets a little easier each time.
Right. Eventually, if you walk it enough, you throw down gravel, and then eventually asphalt. That difficult, overgrown dirt path turns into a massive, frictionless, multi-lane neural highway.
And those paved highways represent your 95% subconscious programming. That's why habits feel so effortless. Electricity in the brain always seeks the path of least resistance. It takes almost zero energy for the brain to send an impulse down a paved highway.
Exactly. Now, the magic of neuroplasticity is that it's a two-way street. Yes, you can pave new roads, but what happens to the old road?
They don't just stay there forever. No. If you stop walking down a path, if you actively interrupt a bad habit, the forest eventually reclaims it. The weeds grow back over the asphalt. The paved road cracks, it breaks down, and eventually it just disappears.
It starves.
Yes. So to change a deeply ingrained habit, you don't fight the old highway. You grab your machete, you start bushwhacking a brand new neural pathway, and you simply let the old highway starve from neglect until the forest swallows it up.
It's a very elegant system.
Yeah.
And we have undeniable physical evidence of this forest changing shape.
Yes. Let's talk about the data.
Our sources highlight a landmark study that really shook the scientific community. It was led by neuroscientist Sarah Lazar at Harvard University. Lazar wanted to know if a purely mental exercise could change the physical weight and structure of the brain's hardware.
Let's really dig into this study because this is the absolute proof in the pudding.
She took a group of individuals who had never meditated before in their lives. She put them into fMRI scanners to get a baseline map of their brain's physical structure.
Okay, so she has the before picture.
Right. Then she put them through an 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction program. All they did was practice simple mindfulness meditation, focusing on their breath, bringing their attention back to the present moment for an average of about 27 minutes a day. Just 8 weeks.
Less than half an hour a day for 2 months. I mean, that is a blip in a human lifespan.
It's basically nothing. But when she put them back in the fMRI scanners after those 8 weeks, the results were revolutionary. The scans showed a statistically significant, measurable increase in the physical thickness of the cerebral cortex.
Wait, they grew brain tissue. Explain the cerebral cortex for us.
It's the highly folded outer layer of the brain, the gray matter. It's the area responsible for high-level executive functions: learning, memory, perspective-taking, and emotional regulation. By simply sitting quietly and focusing their attention, these participants literally grew new brain tissue. They thickened the hardware.
That is insane.
And conversely, Lazar's team also noticed a decrease in the gray matter density of the amygdala.
And what did the amygdala do?
It's the brain's primal fear and stress center. So the fear center physically shrank, while the executive control center physically grew.
I really want that to land for you listening. They didn't just fill out a survey and report, yeah, I'm feeling a little more relaxed.
No, this wasn't subjective.
They literally altered their physical biology. The hardware upgraded itself strictly based on how they utilize the software. That is the ultimate proof of neuroplasticity.
It is incredibly empowering.
Yeah.
But it also introduces a massive contradiction that we have to address.
I know exactly where you're going with this. The listener's probably thinking, okay, if my brain is this malleable, if I can literally grow my cerebral cortex in 8 weeks just by breathing, why does it feel so impossibly hard to change? Why do I feel stuck?
That is the pivotal question. The brain is undeniably capable of massive structural change, but there is a biological roadblock that acts as a kill switch.
A kill switch.
Yes. It shuts neuroplasticity down entirely. And that enemy is chronic stress. To understand why we get stuck, we have to look really closely at the mechanics of the fight or flight response.
Let's unpack this, because the word stress has been completely watered down in our modern vocabulary, right? We say, oh, I'm so stressed about this email. But biologically, stress isn't just a feeling, it's a very violent cascade of chemical events, isn't it?
It's an aggressive systemic override. When your body perceives a threat, the amygdala, that primitive fear center we just mentioned, that shrank in the meditators, it pulls a biological fire alarm.
It bypasses the conscious rider entirely.
Completely bypasses the rider and floods your bloodstream with a cocktail of stress hormones,
Yeah.
primarily cortisol and adrenaline.
What exactly is that cocktail doing to the body?
It's preparing you for physical combat. Your heart rate accelerates to pump oxygen to your major muscle groups. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow. Your digestive system completely shuts down to conserve energy. But most importantly for our discussion, your prefrontal cortex, the thick, logical thinking, conscious part of your brain that we want to grow, essentially loses blood flow and goes offline.
The rider is forcefully bucked off the elephant.
Exactly. The emotional, reactive, purely survival-based programming takes absolute control. And we have to give evolution credit here,
Oh, for sure.
because in a true life or death physical survival situation, this mechanism is a masterpiece of biological engineering. If a saber-toothed tiger leaps out of the brush, you do not want your prefrontal cortex engaging in a philosophical debate about the tiger's motives.
I wonder if he's had a rough childhood.
Exactly. You don't want to analyze the aerodynamics of its leap. You want the logical brain to shut the hell up so the primitive brain can dump adrenaline to your quadriceps and make you sprint up a tree.
But here is the massive evolutionary mismatch. And this is the core dilemma of modern human existence. We evolved this brilliant, explosive biological response for acute physical threats. A tiger attacks, you get a massive spike of stress, you run. 10 minutes later, you are either safely up the tree or you are eaten. Either way, the acute stress event is over. The cortisol clears out of your bloodstream, and your nervous system resets to baseline.
But look at how we live today.
Exactly. We are very rarely running from actual tigers. Instead, we are being hunted by ambiguous, never-ending psychological threats. We are chased by looming deadlines. We are stalked by inflation and mortgage rates. We are dealing with abstract existential dread on a 24-hour news cycle.
And here is the fatal flaw in the hardware. Your amygdala cannot tell the difference between the physical threat of a predator and the psychological threat of a passive-aggressive email from your boss.
Wait, it can't tell the difference.
The biological response is identical. The fire alarm gets pulled either way. So instead of experiencing a 10-minute spike of cortisol followed by a reset, modern humans are living in a state of chronic, prolonged, low-grade fight or flight.
That sounds exhausting.
It is. We are marinating our brains in cortisol from the moment we wake up and check our phones until the moment we try to go to sleep.
And what happens to the forest? What does marinating in cortisol do to neuroplasticity?
It utterly paralyzes it. Building new neural pathways requires a tremendous amount of metabolic energy. But when your system is flooded with cortisol, your brain believes you are in a literal fight for your life.
So it's not going to do construction work.
No, it is not going to waste precious energy bushwhacking a new path through the forest when it thinks a tiger is right behind you. It shuts down all non-essential functions, including neurogenesis, which is the creation of new neurons.
Wow.
It forces the electrical signals to lock into the old, familiar, deeply paved highways because those routes are fast, automatic, and safe. You absolutely cannot reprogram the elephant while the elephant genuinely believes it is under attack.
That is a massive light bulb moment. The physical brain can change, neuroplasticity is a scientific fact, but we have to manage our stress response first. If we don't turn off the fire alarm, the system locks us out. So, assuming we can get the cortisol under control, which we will give you the precise toolkit for shortly, we need to identify what keeps pulling the alarm. What exactly is the bad code in the software that keeps triggering this chronic stress in the first place?
We're moving from the hardware limitations into the specific software bugs, the glitches in our daily internal programming. And the most pervasive, destructive bugs in the human operating system are what psychologists term limiting beliefs.
Limiting beliefs. Let's make this tangible. If you're listening, I want you to mentally check the box if any of these sound familiar. Have you ever caught yourself internally muttering, I'm just not smart enough to figure this out?
Very common.
Or, I have absolutely no natural talent for this. How about people from my background don't get those kinds of opportunities? Or my personal favorite, the one that hits me the hardest, it's just too late for me to start over.
Every single one of us has a variation of that code running. Limiting beliefs are fundamentally fictions. They're subjective stories we tell ourselves, almost always inherited from childhood environments, authority figures, or early experiences of failure.
I have to push back here, or at least admit where I get genuinely stuck with this, because it's easy to say they're just fictions. But let's say I try to start a business and it goes bankrupt. And then I try to learn coding and I fail the certification. My brain looks at that data and says, I am not equipped to succeed at complex tasks.
Right.
And honestly, based on the empirical data of my failures, that feels like an objective fact. How do we biologically or psychologically separate a hard fact from a limiting belief?
It's an excellent pushback. The distinction lies in permanence and identity. A fact is an observation of a past event. My business went bankrupt. A limiting belief takes that past event and metastasizes it into a permanent identity. I am a failure.
I am a failure.
Right. The danger isn't the initial failure. The danger is neuroplasticity. Because if you repeat the fiction, I am a failure, to yourself every single day, you literally pave a massive multi-lane neural highway for that exact thought.
It becomes the asphalt.
Exactly. It ceases to be an opinion and becomes your subconscious default. The elephant adopts it as a core operating principle.
And this leads us directly into the groundbreaking research of Dr. Carol Dweck at Stanford University. Our sources highlight her work as the fundamental key to fixing these software bugs. Dweck found that, broadly speaking, human beings operate on one of two distinct mindsets.
Yes, the fixed mindset versus the growth mindset. And since we are elevating this to the level of neurobiology, let's look at what Dweck's research actually shows under the hood. In a fixed mindset, your core programming dictates that your abilities, your intelligence, and your talents are set in stone at birth.
Like, you drew your genetic lottery ticket, and that's it. You are a math person or you aren't.
Which means any failure is catastrophic.
Because there's no room for improvement.
Right. Because if traits are fixed, then failing a test doesn't mean I didn't study enough. It means I am inherently stupid. Failure is viewed as permanent proof of your biological limits. And neurologically, when people with a fixed mindset make an error, brain scans show a massive spike in a specific electrical signal called the error-related negativity, or ERN.
The ERN. What does that do?
It's a distress signal. It triggers the amygdala, spikes cortisol, and causes the person to actively avoid the challenge in the future to protect their ego.
So they pull the biological fire alarm on themselves?
Exactly. But then you have the growth mindset.
Right.
In a growth mindset, your core programming dictates that your current abilities are simply starting points. Intelligence and talent are highly malleable and can be developed through effort, neuroplasticity, and persistence.
In this mindset, failure loses its sting.
It's stripped of identity. Failure isn't permanent proof of incompetence. It is simply raw data. It's feedback on how to adjust your strategy. When people with a growth mindset make an error, their brain scans look entirely different. Instead of a distress signal, you see heightened electrical activity in the prefrontal cortex, the learning center.
So the brain says, okay, that didn't work. Let's process this data and route a new neural pathway.
Precisely.
So to make the shift from a fixed to a growth mindset, we really have to examine the sheer volume of our internal self-talk. Because the statistics on this in the source material absolutely blew my mind. Do you know how many individual thoughts the average human brain produces in a single day?
Yeah.
We speak to ourselves internally between 60,000 and 80,000 times a day.
It is an incessant, never-ending internal monologue.
60 to 80,000 times. And here's the brutal reality of the data. Research shows that 70 to 80% of those thoughts are negative.
70 to 80%.
Why did I say that stupid thing in the meeting? I look terrible in these jeans. I am definitely going to bomb this presentation tomorrow. 70 to 80%. That means we are firing negative, stressful, limiting electrical impulses through our neural pathways tens of thousands of times a single day.
We are aggressively, relentlessly paving the highways of our own misery.
We really are.
And if we connect this to the mechanism of chronic stress we discussed earlier, it explains everything. We aren't being chased by tigers. We're pulling the biological fire alarm on ourselves 60,000 times a day with our own internal dialogue. The call is coming from inside the house.
But we can hack this. We really can.
Yeah.
I want to give the listener a highly actionable tool right now, borrowed from elite sports psychology. Olympic athletes use conscious, structured self-talk to achieve measurable physical performance gains. They alter their physical reality with their words.
They absolutely do.
Oh, so how do we intervene in those 60,000 thoughts? I want to introduce a very simple, deceptively powerful hack. Whenever that inner voice of yours chimes in and says, I can't do this, or I'm not good at this, I want you to force your conscious writer to add one single word to the end of that sentence. And that word is yet.
Yet. It is a profound linguistic intervention.
I can't do this yet.
Yep.
I don't understand this software yet. I
Yeah.
am not physically fit yet. By adding that one three-letter word, you instantly interrupt the fixed mindset neural pathway. You take a definitive neurological dead end and you wedge the door open for neuroplasticity. You force the brain to acknowledge the dimension of time and the possibility of growth.
It's a perfect example of conscious intervention. But beyond our active self-talk, we also have to be aware of how the brain naturally distorts reality passively.
Yeah.
These are known as cognitive biases.
Right.
Because the fundamental truth that shocks most people is this. Your brain does not process reality objectively. It acts as a massive filter, deleting, distorting, and generalizing information constantly to save metabolic energy.
Because processing 40 million bits of data perfectly would fry the system, so the elephant takes shortcuts.
Exactly. And two of the most dangerous shortcuts are confirmation bias and negativity bias. Let's unpack confirmation bias first. This is the brain's psychological tendency to only notice, remember, and give weight to information that confirms what you already subconsciously believe, while actively ignoring data that contradicts it.
So if your limiting belief is, I am not respected at work, how does the bias play out?
Your confirmation bias acts like a highly targeted spotlight. You could give a presentation, and afterward, 10 colleagues could come up and tell you it was brilliant.
Sounds like a good day.
But one colleague, as they walk out, slightly furrows their brow and says, maybe the data on slide 4 was a bit dense. Your confirmation bias will literally delete the 10 compliments from your working memory and obsessively fixate on the one critique.
Oh, I've done that so many times.
We all have. Because the critique aligns with the pre-existing code of I am not respected. The elephant says, aha, I knew it. Here's the proof.
It is infuriating when you catch your brain doing this, and then you compound that with negativity bias.
Yeah, and negativity bias is deeply, stubbornly evolutionary. It's a fundamental survival trait. Our ancient ancestors did not survive by appreciating the good things in life. They survived by paying hyper-vigilant attention to the bad, dangerous things.
That makes sense.
It didn't matter if you remembered where the beautiful, sweet-smelling flowers were. But if you forgot where the venomous snakes nested, you died. So our modern brains are genetically hardwired to act like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. We weigh a negative event much, much heavier than a positive one.
So what does this mean for us as we navigate our daily lives? It means that when you are lying in bed at night feeling overwhelmed, thinking that everything in your life is going wrong, that feeling is not necessarily a reflection of objective reality.
No, it really is.
It is a biological illusion. It is a software glitch designed to keep a caveman alive, but it is ruining your modern peace of mind.
And the major takeaway here is that recognizing these biases is the very first step toward cognitive freedom. You have to realize that what you cannot see controls you entirely.
Right.
If you don't know that you possess a biological negativity bias, you will just blindly assume the world is a terrible, hostile place. But what you can see, you can consciously respond to. When you catch your brain fixating obsessively in a negative detail, the writer can step in and say, that's just my negativity bias acting up. That's just the evolutionary hardware pinging. No, what is the actual objective truth of this situation?
Okay, let's take a breath and look at the map of where we are. We've diagnosed the system. We understand that the hardware is neuroplastic and capable of massive change, but chronic stress shuts that ability down.
Correct.
We understand that the software bugs keeping us stressed are limiting beliefs, negative self-talk, and evolutionary cognitive biases. Now we reach the most important part of the deep dive. We are going to transition into the developer toolkit.
The fun part.
Exactly. How do you, the listener, practically and systematically rewrite your neural code? We are going to explore 5 scientifically proven tools extracted straight from our source material.
And tool number 1 is the foundational prerequisite for all the others. It's meditation and mindfulness. And before anyone rolls their eyes or dismisses this, it is crucial to understand its modern clinical application.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because for decades, meditation had a severe PR problem in the West. People associated it entirely with mysticism or monks sitting in lotus position on mountaintops chanting.
Right, it seems very esoteric.
But today, it is the ultimate executive tool for cognitive dominance. If you look at the top performers in the world across any industry, some form of mindfulness practice is entirely non-negotiable. The sources mention the elite tier of Silicon Valley, the CEOs of Apple, Google, Salesforce. They all use mindfulness to manage their neural hardware.
Steve Jobs was famous for his rigorous, lifelong Zen practice.
Exactly. And Jeff Weiner, the former CEO of LinkedIn, would literally schedule blocks of empty time into his calendar every single day just to regulate his nervous system.
And the reason these hyper-successful pragmatic individuals use it isn't to reach some esoteric state of spiritual enlightenment.
Mhm.
They use it because, as we discussed with the Harvard MRI study, it is the single most effective, scientifically proven method to lower systemic cortisol, pull the brain out of the amygdala-driven fight-or-flight response, and reactivate the prefrontal cortex,
It turns the conscious rider back on.
and calms the panicked elephant down.
But meditation can feel intimidating. So what is the immediate actionable step here? If someone has never meditated, what do they do right now?
Our source text provides a very specific physiological intervention. It's an entry-level mindfulness technique called 4-7-8 breathing. And you can do this right now, sitting in your car or at your desk.
Walk us through it.
You inhale quietly through your nose for a count of 4 seconds. You hold that breath for a count of 7 seconds. And then you exhale completely through your mouth, making a slight whoosh sound for a slow count of 8 seconds. And you repeat that cycle 3 to 5 times.
In 4, hold 7, out 8. But what is the actual biological machinery at work here? Why those specific number?
The magic is in making the exhale significantly longer than the inhale. When you exhale slowly for 8 seconds, your diaphragm moves upward, and it physically puts pressure on the vagus nerve.
The vagus nerve.
Yes, the vagus nerve is the main communication highway between your body and your brain. When it gets stimulated by that long exhale, it squirts out a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine. This chemical physically acts like a brake pedal on your heart rate.
Oh, wow.
It forces the nervous system to switch from the sympathetic state, the stressed fight-or-flight mode, over to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest mode. It is a manual biological override that immediately shifts the brain into a calm state.
It's literally pulling the emergency brake on your cortisol production. If you want to make this a daily practice, our sources recommend guided apps like Headspace, Calm, or Insight Timer. You don't need to sit for an hour. Start with 5 minutes a day to start bushwhacking that pathway.
Exactly. Start small.
Okay, moving seamlessly into tool number 2, because once the brain is calm, the elephant's standing there waiting for directions. How do we give it a new map? That brings us to visualization. Now, I have to be completely honest. I want to push back on this one heavily.
Please do. Where is the skepticism?
I understand how a breathing technique physically changes your heart rate via the vagus nerve. That is mechanics. But visualization, the idea that merely imagining something in my mind's eye can actually change my physical reality.
Yeah, it sounds a bit out there.
It sounds dangerously close to the secret or magical thinking. Just picture $1 million and the universe will hand it to you.
It's a completely valid skepticism, and frankly, a healthy one. But what is fascinating here is that the clinical science of visualization has absolutely nothing to do with magic or the universe. It has entirely to do with how the brain processes sensory stimuli.
Okay.
The underlying neurological fact is that your brain cannot fully distinguish between a vivid, real-world physical experience and an intensely imagined one. They spark the exact same electrical activity.
Wait, they light up the exact same neural pathways?
Yes. Our source material cites a famous, highly replicated experiment involving pianists. Researchers took 2 groups of people. Group A was instructed to physically practice playing a complex sequence on a piano for 2 hours a day, for 2 weeks.
Okay, standard practice.
Right. But Group B never touched a physical piano. They were instructed to sit in a quiet room, close their eyes, and vividly imagine practicing that exact same sequence.
Just imagining it.
Yes. They were told to imagine the physical feeling of their fingers hitting the keys, the resistance of the pedals, the sound of the notes echoing in the room. After 2 weeks, researchers mapped both groups' brains using neuroimaging.
And what did they find?
The group that only imagined practicing had developed nearly the exact same neurological thickening in their motor cortex as the group that actually physically played the piano.
That is absolutely unbelievable. So they were paving the neural highway, laying down the asphalt without ever moving a single muscle.
Precisely. They were compiling the code offline, and this is exactly why elite athletes rely on it religiously. Take Michael Phelps, the most decorated Olympian in human history.
Yeah.
He didn't just swim laps. He had a rigorous visualization routine.
Yeah.
Every single night before going to sleep, he would watch a videotape of his perfect race in his mind. But it wasn't just a visual daydream. He engaged all the senses.
He made it real for the brain.
Right. He would imagine the chemical smell of the chlorine, the exact temperature of the water on his skin, the specific tension in his lats during the flip turn, the muffled roar of the crowd underwater. He programmed the elephant so deeply with such high-definition data that by the time he actually dove into the water in Beijing, his subconscious simply executed a script it had already run successfully 10,000 times.
That completely shatters my skepticism. It's
Yeah.
not daydreaming. It is literally writing software.
Mhm.
Okay, tool number 3, gratitude journaling. Now, this one sounds almost too simple to be effective. Every day, you just write down 3 things you are grateful for. That's the whole exercise. But the clinical data on this is wild.
It is remarkably robust. The source references the extensive work of Dr. Robert Emmons from UC Davis, who is arguably the world's leading scientific expert on the psychology of gratitude. In his longitudinal studies, subjects who kept a regular gratitude journal experienced profound, measurable shifts.
Like what?
They consistently reported being 25% happier. They had longer, deeper sleep cycles. They showed significant decreases in symptoms of clinical depression and reduced biomarkers for systemic inflammation.
25% happier just from writing down 3 sentences a day. How is that biologically possible? What is the mechanism?
It comes down to neurochemistry and rewiring the negativity bias we discussed earlier. Remember, your brain is evolutionarily hardwired to scan the horizon for danger and focus on the negative.
Right. Velcro for negative, Teflon for positive.
Exactly. When you actively sit down with a pen and force yourself to search through your day for 3 positive things, no matter how small, like a good cup of coffee or a kind word from a stranger, you trigger the release of dopamine and serotonin.
And those are the good ones.
Yes, these are the brain's primary reward and mood-stabilizing neurotransmitters.
So you're giving yourself a chemical reward for noticing the good.
Exactly. And because of neuroplasticity, neurons that fire together wire together. By forcing your brain to scan for the positive every single night, you are actively bushwhacking a new neural pathway of optimism.
That is so cool.
Over time, usually within about 21 days, the brain adapts to this new directive. It starts noticing good things automatically in the background without the conscious writer having to force it. You literally rebuild the brain's filtration system.
It's like you're taking off sunglasses that only let in dark light and putting on a completely new lens. Tool number 4 is intention setting and affirmations. Now, before we get into the affirmations, we need to clearly distinguish between a goal and an intention because they are very different animals.
Very different.
A goal is heavily focused on an external outcome. I want to lose 10 kilograms. I want to get a promotion to senior VP. An intention is focused entirely on internal alignment. It's about how you choose to show up in the process.
Right.
So instead of the goal, I want to lose 10 kilos, the intention is, I choose to treat my body with respect today.
The intention focuses on the immediate process, not the distant destination. It keeps your conscious mind anchored in the present moment, which, neurologically speaking, is the only place you have actual agency.
Which ties directly into affirmations, right?
Yes. Affirmations are positive statements you repeat to yourself in the present tense. Statements like, I am capable of mastering new skills, or I am resilient in the face of setbacks.
But there is a very specific science to the timing of these affirmations, right? You can't just yell them in traffic and expect the elephant to change course.
No, the timing is critical.
Yeah.
The neurological data shows that doing your affirmations just before you drift off to sleep or in the very first few minutes right when you wake up is exponentially more effective.
Why is that?
Because during those twilight states, your brainwave frequency physically shifts out of the high alert beta waves of daily life and slows down into alpha waves and eventually theta waves.
What happens in those alpha and theta states?
When you are in alpha, the conscious, critical, analytical rider is sleepy. The guard is down. But the subconscious elephant is wide open and highly receptive. The barrier between the two minds thins out, making the brain highly malleable to new programming.
But there is a crucial caveat here that the sources explicitly point out, and it's where most people get affirmations wrong. Your affirmation must feel at least somewhat believable to you, or your brain will completely reject the code.
This is so important.
If you currently have negative $14 in your checking account and you stand in front of the mirror yelling, I am a multi-billionaire, your conscious mind knows you are lying. It creates severe cognitive dissonance, which actually triggers the amygdala and causes stress.
You're pulling the alarm again.
Exactly. You have to bridge the
Right.
gap. You have to say something like, I am actively learning how to create financial stability, or I am open to new opportunities to grow my income. It has to be believable enough for the subconscious to accept the file without throwing an error code.
That is an excellent point. You have to negotiate with the elephant, gently guide it, not lie to its face. Which brings us to our final tool. Tool number 5, self-regulation.
Self-regulation, the ultimate mastery.
It is the master skill that dictates the success of all the others. This is the ability to actively monitor and manage your internal energy states, your emotional spikes, and your behaviors in real time, especially under pressure.
And the Sources use a great quote for this.
Yes, to frame this, the source text quotes one of the most profound, resilient thinkers of the 20th century, Dr. Viktor Frankl.
Viktor Frankl. For those who might not know, he was an Austrian psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust, specifically enduring the unimaginable horrors of the Auschwitz concentration camp. He wrote the seminal book, Man's Search for Meaning.
He did. And having endured the absolute worst degradation and suffering that human beings can inflict on one another, Frankl realized something incredibly profound about the architecture of the human mind. The quote highlighted in our sources is this: "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom."
Let's really unpack that because it is incredibly dense. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. What does that actually look like in our daily lives?
Think about receiving a highly critical, unfair text message from a family member.
Oh, the worst.
The ping of the text is the stimulus. Your immediate hot-blooded urge to fire back a nasty defensive text is the automatic response. For most people operating on default programming, there is absolutely zero space between those two events. The stimulus happens, the amygdala fires, and the elephant reacts instantly and destructively.
But Frankl is saying that if we can create a gap, even a microscopic 2-second gap, we reclaim our entire human agency.
Yes. That tiny space is where the conscious writer gets to take a breath, grab the reins back, and assert control. And the actionable step here is a widely used cognitive behavioral tool called the S.P technique.
I love this one.
It is the ultimate emergency brake during a stressful moment, a heated board meeting, or an escalating argument with your spouse.
Right. S-T-O-P. Let's break the acronym down for the listener.
S stands for simply stop, do not act, do not speak,
Yeah.
do not hit send on the email, just physically and mentally freeze.
Okay, S is stop.
T is take a breath. Specifically, use the 4-7-8 breathing we discussed to physically interrupt the cortisol cascade and engage the vagus nerve.
Interrupt the hardware.
Exactly.
Ah.
Corpi is observe. Step outside yourself and notice what your body and mind are doing.
Yeah.
Is your chest tight? Is your jaw painfully clenched? Notice the internal monologue, I want to scream at this person.
Yeah.
Just observe the data objectively, without judging yourself for feeling angry.
Just be the observer.
And finally, P is proceed. Now that you have wedged that space open and your prefrontal cortex is receiving blood flow again, proceed with an intentional, conscious choice that aligns with your values, rather than an automated, destructive reaction.
Stop. Take a breath. Observe. Proceed. It sounds so simple on a deep dive, but practicing that space in the heat of the moment is a lifelong mastery.
It truly is.
Okay, we have covered massive ground. We've mapped the theory, the hardware, the software, and the developer toolkit. Now we're going to transition into compiling the code. To prove that these tools aren't just theoretical thought experiments discussed in sterile labs, we're going to look at what happens when they are applied against extreme, visceral, real-world adversity.
Let's examine the primary case study from our source material.
We are going to talk about the life of J.K. Rowling. Now, obviously, everyone today knows her as the creator of the Harry Potter universe, one of the wealthiest and most culturally impactful authors in human history.
Yes, a global phenomenon.
But before the magic, her reality was bleak beyond measure. In her late 20s, she found herself at absolute rock bottom. Her short-lived marriage had violently imploded, leaving her a single mother. She was completely unemployed.
It was a desperate situation.
She was living on state welfare in the UK, barely able to feed her child. She was diagnosed with severe clinical depression and admitted to experiencing daily suicidal thoughts. She was writing the first Harry Potter manuscript in small cafes in Edinburgh, literally because it was warmer than staying in her unheated, freezing apartment. She couldn't even afford a used computer, so she meticulously typed out her 90,000-word manuscript on a heavy manual typewriter. And when she finally finished it and sent it out to the world, she faced 12 consecutive brutal rejections from publishers. 12.
Think about the massive neurobiological toll of that situation. Think about the limiting beliefs that an environment like that would naturally breed. The confirmation bias would be screaming at top volume, "You are a total failure. You have no money. You are a burden. You have 12 official rejection letters from industry experts proving that your writing is entirely worthless."
The negativity bias would be completely overwhelming any shred of hope. Her biological system was undoubtedly flooded with chronic cortisol. The elephant was actively trying to drag her down the paved highway of despair and surrender.
But this is exactly where the tools, the space between stimulus and response come into play.
Exactly.
What is crucial to analyze here is the deliberate mindset shift she executed. She engaged in intense cognitive self-regulation and forcefully reprogrammed her internal narrative. Instead of viewing herself as a permanent victim of her crushing circumstances, which is the absolute definition of the fixed mindset, she consciously reframed her rock bottom.
She grabbed the reins.
She grabbed the reins from the panicked elephant. Her famous quote, reflecting on this time, is a masterclass in cognitive reframing. Failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. I was set free because my greatest fear had been realized and I was still alive. And so rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life.
Failure freed me.
Hmm.
What a massive, defiant cognitive reframe. She took the exact same objective facts, divorced, broke, clinically depressed, repeatedly rejected. Instead of letting the elephant interpret those facts as I am doomed, her conscious writer interpreted them as I have absolutely nothing left to lose, therefore I am invincible.
That's the growth mindset.
She grabbed her machete, and through sheer force of will and a manual typewriter, she bushwhacked a completely new neural pathway.
And that new resilient pathway allowed her to persevere through the stinging rejection of the 12th publisher, until a small, obscure publisher finally said yes to the 13th submission.
And ultimately, from that unheated apartment, she built a billion-dollar literary empire. Her story is a towering testament to the neurobiological fact that your ultimate reality is not dictated by your external circumstances, but by the operating system you consciously choose to process those circumstances.
It's a powerful proof.
Okay, we are going to do a rapid-fire listener Q&A simulation to synthesize everything we've talked about today. These are the 3 most vital, common questions that tend to pop up when people actually sit down and start doing this work. I will play the role of the skeptical, frustrated listener, and you give us the expert breakdown. Ready?
Let's do it. Fire away.
Pushback number 1. This all sounds great in theory, but I am just naturally a negative thinker. My brain always instantly goes to the worst-case scenario. It's exhausting. How do I change if that's just fundamentally who I am?
The very first thing you need to absorb is that it is not your fault. And it is not a character flaw. You are not broken.
That's a relief.
What you are experiencing is simply the brain's default negativity bias functioning exactly as evolution designed it to, keeping you hypervigilant to threats. The shift happens when you stop identifying with the thoughts. You are the sky. The thoughts are just the weather.
I like that.
When a negative thought arises, practice the O in the S-T-O-P technique. Just observe it. Say to yourself, my primitive hardware is doing that negativity thing again. And then engage your conscious writer and ask one powerful analytical question. Where is the empirical evidence for this thought?
Demand the evidence.
Yes. If your brain is screaming, everyone at the office secretly hates me, demand the evidence. You will almost always find that there is zero objective evidence. It is just a software glitch trying to keep you safe from social ostracization.
I love that separation. Where's the evidence? It treats the thought like a hypothesis, not a fact. Okay, pushback number 2. And I deeply personally relate to this frustration. I tried the meditation tool you suggested. I sat down, I tried to focus on my breath, but my mind constantly wanders. 10 seconds in, I'm thinking about my grocery list, or an email I forgot to send, or an argument I had 3 years ago. I am clearly failing at this. I don't have the discipline. Should I just quit?
This is, without a doubt, the single most common misconception that keeps people from experiencing the benefits of meditation. The wandering mind is not a failure.
Really?
Let me repeat that emphatically, having a wandering mind during meditation does not mean you are failing. The human brain produces thoughts the exact same way the heart beats blood. It is what the organ is built to do.
It's just doing its job.
Exactly. The actual magic, the literal neuroplastic growth we saw in the Harvard MRI scans, happens in the precise microsecond that you notice your mind has wandered. When you say, oh, I'm thinking about buying avocados, and you gently, without judging yourself, put your focus back to the sensation of the breath. That return, that specific mental motion, is a bicep curl for your prefrontal cortex.
The return is the curl.
That is the actual rep. You want your mind to wander so you can practice the skill of bringing it back. That is how you thicken the hardware.
The noticing is the rep. It's not about an empty mind, it's about the return. That completely changes the paradigm. Okay, final pushback. Pushback number 3. I've been doing the gratitude journaling. I've been doing the 478 breathing. I'm catching my negative self-talk. But the brain is inside my skull. How do I actually know if my mindset has changed? How do I know if I've successfully paved a new neural highway?
You won't know when things are going perfectly. You will know by closely observing how you react to your very next failure.
Oh, wow.
When we operate on our old legacy default programming, our reaction to failure is usually intense self-blame, deep shame, and an overwhelming desire to quit and hide. That is the fixed mindset highway firing on all cylinders.
The old road.
But if you experience a painful setback, maybe you completely bomb a presentation, or you make a costly financial mistake, and your immediate automatic reaction shifts from burning shame to genuine curiosity.
Curiosity.
If you find yourself naturally asking, okay, that was brutal, that didn't work, what can I learn from this data to adjust my strategy? Without having to force the thought, that is the physical proof. The neural pathways have officially rewired. The elephant is now instinctively walking down the new road.
Wow. If you shift from self-blame to what can I learn, you have officially hacked this supercomputer. Okay, we have covered massive ground today. We're going to do a high-energy recap of the core truths to make sure this is locked in your memory. Number 1, your brain is not a fixed depreciating asset. The science of neuroplasticity proves that you can change your physical hardware, grow new brain tissue, and rewire your habits until the very last day of your life.
Number 2, 95% of your daily life is driven by your incredibly powerful subconscious elephant. You cannot fight it with sheer conscious willpower. You will lose. You have to patiently reprogram it.
Number 3, limiting beliefs and negative self-talk are not objective facts. They are just bad code inherited from the past. And you have the active choice to rewrite them, starting simply by adding the word yet.
Number 4, you now possess a 5-part developer toolkit. Mindfulness to stop the stress response, visualization to map the new route, gratitude to rewire the negativity bias, intention setting in alpha states to write the code, and self-regulation to create the space between stimulus and response.
And as a final encouragement, remember that lasting change requires daily reps. You're standing at the edge of a dense jungle with a machete. You are not going to see a perfectly paved, multi-lane highway on day 1. But if you do the work, if you do the breathing, if you do the journaling, if you practice the pause consistency, you'll eventually render your old self entirely unrecognizable.
It absolutely will.
The sources leave us with a brilliant anchoring quote from Nelson Mandela, a man who spent 27 years confined in a physical prison, yet rigorously maintained the absolute freedom and agency of his own mind. He said, "It always seems impossible until it's done."
The only thing standing between the impossible and the done is the persistent daily application of these tools.
I want to leave you with one final lingering thought to carry with you today. We started this deep dive by comparing your brain to a highly trainable muscle and your limiting beliefs to a deeply ingrained, outdated operating system. I want you to genuinely think about the sheer, staggering amount of metabolic energy your brain has expended over the last few decades, meticulously wiring itself to master the dark art of holding you back.
It's a lot of energy.
It has built massive, highly efficient multi-lane highways of doubt, fear, and hesitation. It is incredibly wonderfully efficient at its job. So what is going to happen when you finally take that exact same incredibly powerful world-building machinery and you turn it around and you point it towards setting yourself free? The tools are literally right there in your hands. So the only question left for you is, what is the very first thought you are going to choose to think when this audio stops?